Prime Minister Modi has now decided to bring back the Economic Advisory Council. It has been set up under the chairmanship of Bibek Debroy. Your first thoughts, Dr. Rangarajan, as the former chairman of the PM EAC?
I welcome the constitution of the Economic Advisory Council, and I have always felt that this council has an important role to play and in advising the Prime Minister and in advising the government on the measures that can be taken at different points in time. Therefore, the choice of the chairman and the choice of the members is very appropriate, and I think they can offer independent advice to the government in terms of what should be done in order to keep the economy going, reviving the economy, and so on. Therefore, the real thought is that the Economic Advisory Council has a role to play, and I appreciate the setting up of the council.
Okay. Good evening, Dr. Rangarajan. Thanks for joining us, sir. What exact role does the PMEAC perform that its absence was so sorely felt? I mean, there were suggestions. There is also a chief economic advisor. There is a Niti Aayog. There are other expert bodies. What exactly does the PMEAC do that these bodies are not able to perform?
Well, this is a body which offers independent advice on many matters. It is not, the chairman is full-time, but the members are part-time. They are good observers and keen observers of the economy, and therefore some kind of an independent advice on both short-term and long-term issues can be offered. I mean, there are. At least the Planning Commission, as it existed earlier, had multiple responsibilities. It was concerned with the allocation of resources and so on and so forth. But the need for a body which can have access to the Prime Minister, access to the government, and offer advice from time to time, suo motu, and sometimes on the request of the Prime Minister, is extremely important. I think it can play a role both in terms of offering advice in public and offering advice in private.
Okay. Well, as distinct from the CEA, who is part of the government, this would be an independent body, is what you're saying. But Dr. Rangarajan, at the moment, what is the recipe? Clearly, growth was slowing even before demonetization, and demonetization and the GST-related destocking has further slowed the economy, or so it seems. What's the recipe now? Is it monetary or is it fiscal?
No. I think the issue is, if the growth has been slowing down even before some of the things that you mentioned, the clear point is that the private investment has been weakening. Public expenditures, public capital expenditures have in fact shown an increase. And therefore public investment has been happening. It is really the private investment that has been weakening, and I think they should really look at what needs to be done in order to correct this weakness. There was a talk earlier about the number of stalled projects and how 100 stalled projects account for nearly 80% of the total value of the projects and so on. Therefore, reactivating the stalled projects, both in the public and the private sector, is a low-hanging fruit. And one must monitor continuously and see what can be done. And secondly, if private investment is not picking up because of the problems in the banking sector, the inability of the banking sector to provide additional credit, I think that also needs to be looked into, and perhaps recapitalization must be done as quickly as possible. To some extent, the disinvestment must be increased, and the additional resources raised must be put into the banks. Therefore, it is only one part of the public sector helping the other part of the public sector. Yes. So, and also finally, I would say that close and intimate analysis of the problems of individual industries and sectors and a close conversation and consultation with the various industrial groups which are in a position to be able to make investment, all that must be done. I think it is this kind of sector by sector, industry by sector analysis is important.
Okay. Well, sir, you were around when the first tranche of recapitalization bonds were issued. At the moment, there isn't so much fiscal space. The RBI dividend is half compared to what it was last year. Spectrum revenues are not as good. And the GST itself has meant that the cesses that was available to the central government is not available this year. There isn't fiscal space to capitalize banks hugely. Is recap bond a good idea?
I'm not able to hear you. I'm not able to hear you.
Okay.
Can you say what?
Well, I was just saying there isn't much fiscal space this year for a huge recapitalization. So would recapitalization bonds be a good idea?
Did you ask about bank capitalization?
Yes,
Is that
sir.
the question?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
I think it is important because the new credit is not flowing from the bank, then probably the banks are constrained and restrained from doing it because of this. And therefore, I mean, at this particular point, lowering the rate of interest, whether it will, the policy rate will translate itself into the lowering of the lending rate is a serious question. I mean, it's therefore the ability of the banks to lend must be increased, and one way of doing it is a recapitalization.